It's me again, the gnome, with my third part about the Leney Carp of Cuckoo Pool. At the time of broadcasting, at the time of this recording, I came back just a few days ago from Cuckoo Pool again, and where I enjoyed the excellent company of fishing friends Nigel and Christie. And we saw some sights, and we had quite an adventure. The first part of the adventure was actually getting down to the pool. Following the very heavy rains, the tracks were very waterlogged, and the cars, two cars, both four-wheel drive, were sliding side to side down the tracks as if they were driving on snow. It is a remote place, about as far away as you could possibly imagine from the normal circumstances of a commercial carp pool. Well, we finally got to the pool, having almost got lost, and Nigel was behind. I was in the front with Terry, who had never been to the pool before, and we looked back and Nigel was stuck in the mud, so we had to get out and we had to push the car. Great effort, but nature wasn't done with us yet, because just a little way on the going around the pool, there was a big tree in our way. I say big enough, probably about 15 foot, 20 foot high, and it had come down in the heavy winds. Fortunately for us, it was very rotten, so we were able to break off a lot of the branches, and then Terry and I, with great effort, managed to move the remainder of the tree just enough to one side to get the car through to the main bivvy spot, and then we could have a cup of tea, take a breather, and basically decide what Cuckoo Pool might or might not give us that day and the following day. Beavers and tents were set up and we looked out over the water. No sign of carp on the surface. It was quite a different experience to my experience in September, when there were carp down the side. Indeed, I lost one down the side, put me in the reed beds and exchanged the hook from its mouth to the reeds, and a large common, like something carved out of wood, just cruised in, and I must have moved slightly and it saw me and it cruised out. There was none of that. There were no carp really coming in close, no carp on the surface, and then suddenly out by the island one of them jumped, and Terry's eyes lit up because it was this wonderful golden Leney common. Hard to judge your size when you see a fish jumping, but a large fish. And then we all went round the pool together, looking at the spots, deciding what the best approach might be. Nigel opted for light ledgering towards the island, and another ledger down the side by the reed beds. He was in a spot where he had his 19.8 a few years back, so it's a known fish taking spot. Terry went to the far bank where a certain tree hung swim really called to him, and a bit further out there were a number of carp starting to jump. Again, beautiful golden commons, all of them. There are a few mirrors in the pool, but not many. Well, he baited up with maggots and decided to fish eventually both maggots and Brazil nuts on the float in this little nook, and it almost worked for him. I went to the swim where I had caught my 1814 in September and my 6'7", and I was fairly confident carp were going to come in. And again, I had a few very near takes. Whether they were fin wash, line bites, I don't know, but the waggler on one occasion at least went down to perhaps a millimetre, and if it had gone under just that amount more I would have struck. But I waited and I paused and the moment passed. I saw no fin wash. I saw no signs of fish, but I was certainly getting bites of some sort. And as I was using a large piece of shaped luncheon meat as a bait, I dipped that in olive oil, garlic, and then I rolled it in exploding ground bait. And that worked well for me in September, but not this time. It was a lovely evening though. The twilight came, a fire pit was lit, and we all sat around the fire pit talking about carp and ghosts and all sorts of things, and it was a very memorable evening. But the big factor of our 48 hours was the weather. Before we'd left, Nigel's paid for app was showing it must have been showing Lisbon, because it was giving us a heat wave with temperatures in the 30s. But sadly, once we went to the bank, it was plain old English weather of late October, and that meant cold winds at times and very, very heavy rains on occasions. And we were starting to get very, very worried about the paths. I say it was a 48-hour session, but not quite, because on the second day, around about 2 o'clock, Terry took a look at his weather app and said, there's heavy rain coming, really heavy rain, and we barely got the cars on as it is, and if we stay here any longer, they might find 3 skeletons on the banks of the Cuckoo Pool, assuming they can find it. And so we decided, sadly, to pull off early, fishless. And that was a shame, because I'd had carp jumping along the reed line leading to my swim, and one of them was tremendous. I hesitate to put a weight on it. It is hard to judge jumping fish, but I think we all agree there are carp, Leney commons, probably well in excess of 30 pounds in that pool. Terry's baiting, in the meanwhile, in that little nook overhung with trees, was starting to bear fruit. He was tantalised by 3 big separate fizzes of bubbles over his bait, and he thought it's only a matter of time. But time is something we didn't have. We realised that we could well get stuck there if we stayed any longer, and so, sadly, regretfully, with the fish apparently turning on, opportunities apparently starting to reveal themselves, we pulled off, and with no little difficulty went up the slippy tracks again towards the farm gate, and fortunately we made it out. So yes, a disappointing session on one level, but on another level, a wonderful occasion amongst friends. Will we be back at the Cuckoo Pool? I do hope so, and then we'll tell you more about it. But in the meantime, I can't regret the session. It was very memorable, and as Mr. Crabtree, Bernard Venables, once said, fishing is surely more than the catching of fish.